And by providing heavily subsidized health insurance to people with very low income, and then withdrawing those subsidies as income rises, the Act creates a disincentive for people to work relative to what would have been the case in the absence of that Act.
Dorf, ladies and gentlemen, the head of the CBO testifying today before Congress about the CBO report that came out yesterday. And the report said that there'll be over 2 million jobs lost, people leaving the workforce eventually because of Obamacare, because they'll be able to get free health care and won't want to work. And you heard Mr. Elmendorf there basically dispel the Democratic spin that was put on it immediately after it was released, saying, oh, no, this is a good thing. And Elmendorf said, if you tell people we'll give you this and give you subsidies for it if you don't work or if you make a less amount of money, then that's what they're going to do. And I don't know how you consider that a good thing. But joining us now are two people who will probably set me straight and explain it all to me. First of all, we welcome back Ellis Henican, Newsday columnist. He's back on the panel, holding over from last hour. And Newsmax contributor Hank Sheinkopf, who, of course, is a very familiar face to everyone, a Democratic political public affairs and corporate media consultant for over 25 years and president of Sheinkopf Communications. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hey, Steve.
All right, let's start with you, Hank. Your take on this CBO report that, basically says people will have a disincentive to work under Obamacare.
Not good news for the Democrats, and frankly, watch more U.S. senators try to figure out how to run away from this thing as quickly as possible. The stampede started with Harry Reid last week using tariffs as a way to get there. More people are going to find more ways to run the opposite direction because no one wants to be said that they're giving more entitlements to more people at a time when the country needs a lot more jobs.
And Ellis, I mean, a lot of these senators and people in the House, like Nancy Pelosi, have said publicly, and Debbie Wasserman Schultz, oh, no, we're running on Obamacare in 2014.
Are you still in the get rid of Obamacare bandwagon? Because that's not going to happen, Steve.
Well, then you tell it to the people and the mothers who have lost their oncologists for their little children. You tell it to all the people who don't have hospitals to go to.
Do we need 80 votes, 160? How many would you like?
You can mock it all you want.
I'm mocking it. Yes, I'm mocking it.
Lose issue for Democrats.
Well, let me see if I can answer. First of all, I understand that's a good thing to rile up the base over there on the far right, and just keep doing it because you know what? I think more and more Americans are understanding as more and more people sign up for this thing. We're up in the several million at this point, that this solves a lot of problems. It's not perfect. It's not as good as the plan I would like. But you know, a lot of people like getting health insurance without those pre-existing condition limitations. They like being able to keep their kids on well into their 20s. You can call these entitlements, but most civilized nations have affordable health care, and Americans are getting used to it here now.
It's not that I'm not an expert on health care policy, but I do know something about political campaigns. And I know what's going to happen, and it's only 17 seats the Democrats could really pick up to take the thing back, and it's not going to happen based upon this kind of rhetoric and these kinds of findings. I believe in single payer. I've always said that publicly, and I think everybody ought to have health care. Medicare tends to work very well. This is not Medicare. This is something else, and it's a mix of things that aren't going to work, and average Americans who work for a living or who are out of work because they'd like to be working for a living but can't find jobs in this economy are going to blow up next year and say, whoever did this has got to pay for it.
You know, I've suggested to several Republicans, gentlemen, and they all seem to love the idea, but nobody on the Republican side knows how to get the message out, unfortunately. There are everyday stories in the paper, LA Times, all over the place, and news reports where one company in Pennsylvania, the small business, the guy called his workers, 10 workers, into a room and said, because of Obamacare, here is the new standards our policies have to meet, so here are the new premiums, deductibles. These people are crying. They said, we can't afford this. And this is happening all over the country. And when 85 million of us lose our policies from employer-based policies this year, we're all going to be crying. Ellis, how is this going to survive?
Well, Steve, I hate to remind you, but, you know, a single anecdote is not policy. Let me see if I can unpack this a little bit for you. Unemployment, first of all, is continuing to decline. So if these millions of people were being tossed out of work because of Obamacare, there would be actual statistics and facts to back that up. That simply isn't what's happening. Mm-hmm. There is some pandering on the issue. I agree absolutely with Hank. I mean, I'd rather have single pay. Medicare and Medicaid are the two systems that provide most effective and most cost-effective health care in this country. Let's spread those around. But this idea of just constantly complaining, we're going to try and vote it down again. First of all, the politics aren't there, and the message kind of sucks because you're back to the idea of because the program isn't perfect, denying people health care. Most people kind of like health care.
No, as a matter of fact, Hank, 85% of people like the health care they already had.
That's correct.
And didn't want this and still don't want this.
Well, the real danger to Democrats, particularly in marginal states, will be the destruction that this could potentially provide to small businesses. We're already overburdened. New York State is an anomaly, but where you have small businesses that have limited numbers of employees, they're going to be required to get engaged in health care provision where they haven't been before, or they've subsidized some of their employees. In certain cases, they're going to be required, and their employees, because they have smaller policies, they're going to be cost prohibitive. And what makes it worse, and you look at the way Subchapter S corporations function, the pass-through of income, these guys are just going to go out of business. I mean, there's no question about it. And in states where it matters.
All right,
that's really serious.
Let's move on quickly. Sheila Jackson-Lee today said that the new Congressional Full Employment Caucus, whatever that is, will give Obama a number of executive orders that he can sign. What bothers me is not the executive orders, guys, and we don't have a lot of time, so I'll give you each one chance to weigh in. It's the changing of the laws. Obamacare, the argument for keeping it was it's settled law. Well,
right.
how does a president change settled law by granting exemptions and delays? How is that possible, Ellis?
Well, Steve, the law is very clear on it. And you know what? There's great procedures if he does something illegal to go to court and it'll get overturned. The reality is that new politics call for new steps. You've got a Congress that just absolutely, as a matter of principle, refuses to cooperate on anything. And
they got a budget.
The president has to. The president, in many of these areas, the president has to take action. Back in the day when Congress would cooperate and you could negotiate and make a deal.
Oh, you mean like when Tip O'Neill closed the government down about 7 or 8 times?
Maybe, Steve, maybe in the other days other tactics were necessary. But today when Congress is simply saying no, the president has to
And
act.
Hank, you agree with that?
This president has issued less executive orders than most others, but there is a larger problem with American democracy, which I happen to believe in very strongly. When you cede power to the president and you create the imperial presidency, ultimately you have terrible things going on, like FISA courts being rigged, NSA abuses, and Gulf of Tonkin incidents, and things that don't occur that then become weapons of mass destruction in places like Iraq, with disastrous consequences. Someone's got to stop the president to force him to enforce democracy. That's his job, not to run the rest of us as if we're kind of, beneath him in some fashion. And the Congress is not doing its job. They ought to be standing up and yelling and screaming and saying, this is not the way to do things.
I couldn't agree with you more when Jonathan Turley says that we're looking at an imperial presidency. I think it's a problem. Gentlemen, I thank you both. Very spirited debate, and I'm sure we'll do it again. That, of course, is Ellis Henican, Newsday columnist, and Newsmax contributor Hank Sheinkopf here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Now, in the next half hour, you're not going to want to go anywhere because coming up right after the break, Senator Lindsey Graham will join us. Lots to talk about there, including, of course, his passion, which is Benghazi, and also, Peter Brooks, Senior Fellow Heritage Foundation, talking about possibility of a terrorist attack and at the Olympics, and will Putin accept outside help in trying to prevent that? I'm sure Hank's shaking his head, and I agree it's going this way. No. So we're coming back right here on the Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax TV and radio.
The Steve Malzberg Show.